Hi everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to C# in Unity 3D series. And we're going to continue talking about data types. So in the last tutorial, we went over what data types mean and the two different categories, or the three different categories of data types based on memory allocation. And we also talked about stack and heap. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to talk about the different types of value data types. And if you remember that when we are talking about value data types, the value that a variable references is actually stored in static memory called the stack. Okay, so let's start off by talking about numbers. Now, the number data type can be divided into two: integer and floating point types. Okay, now integers refer to positive or negative numbers, and there's four types for the integer data type: int, long, short, and byte. And long, short, and byte are also numeric data types, except they represent a different range of values. And we'll see what we mean by that. For example, now int represents a 32-bit integer. And if you remember from last tutorial, the value data types store the value in the stack, and each data type has a different memory or storage allocated to it. So int has 32 bits allocated to it, and ints can be positive or negative, and they can store whole numbers within this range. Okay, and here's an example of an int. So an int would be, and I'm just on Rebel, which is an online code playground. So I'm going to console write the value of the variable referenced, the value referenced by variable num, and we should see 10. There you go. So we see 10 here. Okay. Now, a long represents a 64-bit integer, so basically the double of an int, and it's used to store numeric values when int is not big enough. Okay, and it ends with the suffix L, and this can be capital L or small l, but capital L is better because a small l can look like, you know, the number 1. You can get confused. So let's have a look at this. And okay, so there you see my num value, which is of the long data type. Now, on the other hand, the short data type, numeric data type, represents a 16-bit integer, and this is the range for the short type. Okay, and we don't have any suffix here, but notice that, you know, that the data type is indicated before the name of the variable. And like I said in the last tutorial, that C# is a strongly typed language, and this means you have to indicate the data type that a variable is referencing. Now, a byte is an 8-bit integer that represents positive values, and this is the range for a byte. So it's between 0 and the largest possible value is 255. So let me just do this. Okay. Now, this is the first numeric type. So it's the integer data type, right, which can be further categorized into these four broad categories: int, long, short, and byte. And int is the most common. Okay. Now let's come to the float data types. Now, floating point numbers are positive or negative numbers with decimal points. Okay, and there's three broad categories for the float data type. So float, double, and decimal. Now, float is a 32-bit single precision floating point type. So the float has a 7-digit precision, and you're going to see that it ends with the capital F. Okay, and this is the range for float. So out here, float temperature is equal to minus 30.0 F. Now, double is, well, it's the double of a float. It's going to store decimals which are double the value of a float, and it has 14 to 15 digit precision. Okay, and double is going to, end with the suffix D, but this is not necessary. Okay, so you can, as long as you indicate the data type double, you can use the double float data type, and you don't necessarily have to put a small or capital suffix D here as the suffix. Okay, so decimal, this is 128-bit data type, and let me just highlight this. Okay, so this is suitable for financial and monetary calculations because it has 28 to 29 digit precision, and this is the range of the decimal, okay, float data type. And the this decimal data type is going to end with the capital M, right? So this has the highest precision. Okay, so that is about data types. So we went over the numeric data types and the two broad categories, integer type and floating point. And as a beginner, most likely you'll be dealing with int and float. Okay, so let's come down to char. Now, single characters that are surrounded by single quotes, they represent a single character. Okay, those are going to be denoted by the char data type, and you can see I have this keyword here to denote the data type. Okay, now string, a sequence of characters that are surrounded by double quotes are of the string data type. And let me not forget the semicolon. Okay, so for example, string game engine is equal to Unity. Okay, so the char is for single characters. If you have more than one characters, it's going to be a string, and strings are in double quotes and characters are in single quotes. Okay, then we have the Bool data type, and the Bool data type is going to represent Boolean true or false values. So for example, Bool napping is equal to true, Bool eating is equal to false. And that's all for the general overview of data types in C#. If you think this was useful, go ahead and hit like and subscribe.